Now, one thing right now about the film industry, about the Hollywood bubble, whatever have you, is that we know that there's a lot of studios now beginning to cave into the general public and their overall response, their overall pushback, that, by the way, has a lot of valid reasons behind it, a lot of valid points, and the people actually spoke up, many of which actually woke up and began to realize exactly how agenda-driven these studios really are within the film industry, and now you have a lot of them beginning to drop DEI, beginning to drop DEI elements in their films at last minute, some of which, by the way, are still trying to hang on to that. Someone, of course, like Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, to a certain level. But what's interesting here has a lot more to do with actor Will Smith and even Jada Pinkett Smith and what's going on with Will right now behind closed doors and, of course, in the public eye. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about Will Smith is that we know that ever since 2022 and the whole Oscars slap situation against Chris Rock and everything that happened there, he actually lost a whole lot of fans. Well over half his fans, to the point where, you know, we know that Will Smith has been trying to revitalize his career. He's been trying to go back on track to what was, of course, what he was trying to do, of course, before 2022, when the whole Oscar situation went down. However, this is where things begin to pick up and get really interesting, involving Men in Black 5, Jada Pinkett Smith, Sony, and everything else to do with Will Smith, doing, of course, all the worst things you can think of, making all the wrong choices that you can think of behind the scenes over at Sony. Let's get into this. Now, with, of course, multiple major Hollywood studios now beginning to get rid of their DEI departments, while others are latching on still, one studio, however, is beginning to, of course, head into major issues with actor Will Smith after they made a recent sudden decision that they stirred things up behind the scenes. Now, one very crucial update going on with the whole scenario right now with Will Smith and the whole drama surrounding that involves how recently Sony finally came to a conclusion to ditch Jada Pinkett Smith from getting involved in the film as one of the major characters in the 5th installment that serves as a direct sequel to MIB3. It turns out that Will Smith was begging and practically forcing Jada Pinkett Smith to become a part of the film, and even warned Sony that if she doesn't get a role in the film, that he, of course, would be willing to drop his near $100 million contract deal for the movie. It turns out that Sony did decide to boot Jada Pinkett Smith from the project, and it created an uproar just days ago, not just from her, but also from Will Smith, who behind the scenes created so many argumentative conversations that it spread throughout the entire studio of Sony. Of course, it even got to a point where Will Smith and even Jada Pinkett were playing the race card as to why she was rejected from the film by Sony, its CEO, and its studio executives. When in reality, Sony, its CEO, and its studio heads refused to bring on Jada, since they knew, of course, that she is not only box office poison, but also so unlikable and insufferable in the public eye, and to the majority of either Will Smith fans that remain, or, of course, those that are even no longer Will Smith fans. Smith is now, of course, already moving forward with his promised warning against Sony that he is now willing to completely back out of MIB5. However, Sony is desperately trying to negotiate to make a deal with Will Smith, financially speaking, of course, to keep him on for the role of Agent J, regardless of their decision with Jada. To make matters worse for Will, on his sake, of course, is that he even went as far to warn Sony that he is now willing to drop all of the drama details on multiple podcasts and radio shows to set the record straight with why Men in Black 5 is taking so long during the early development phase, since it was in discussion since as much as 3 years ago. So guys, that's one thing about this movie, is that it's been in such a limbo mode ever since MIB International pretty much went south, and that just got destroyed. Nobody really likes that movie. Everyone really considers it not part of the franchise, because not only does it not have Will Smith and, other characters that are very much embedded within the franchise, and other actors, by the way, like Tommy Lee Jones. But to top things off, we know that it also was not really following the rule book of how the MIB movies really are. So to continue and to top things off here, Jada Pinkett is also blaming the studio executives for engaging in sexism. The same exact thing goes as follows for Will Smith, who is making the same argument for not allowing her to be one of the main roles in the Men in Black 5 film. Now, there were rumblings that they wanted her to be, of course, or that Will Smith wanted her to be the romantic interest in MIB5. This all comes in the wake of Smith desperately trying to revitalize his acting career since the 2022 Oscars slap situation with Chris Rock. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you're making an MIB5, a Men in Black 5 film, bring back Rosario Dawson as the romantic interest from MIB2. I think that's the better move than throwing Jada Pinkett Smith in there as the romantic interest, because it just is so inauthentic. We know that she's Will Smith's wife as it is, and it would just seem so forced, like they're just trying to throw in their own marriage into the film. That's basically what it would feel like, right? So Sony's CEO wants nothing to do with Jada Pinkett, especially after some previous projects, by the way, believe it or not, that they worked with her on in the past that didn't end up so well during conversations and never made it into full-on production because of her toxic behavior behind closed doors. This now leaves MIB5 up in the air. So where does this leave Will Smith? Do I think that he's going to take the cards that are being played by Sony where they're going to up his pay dramatically just to keep him on? I would not be too shocked about that, but one thing I will be shocked about is if Sony decides to not play any cards at all. And look, we know at the same exact time they want MIB5. Alright, they want a Men in Black 5 film. They were so upset with the way things ended with MIB International and how they did not get the nostalgia, or the nostalgic tone, I guess you could say, that MIB3 had to an extent. So, look, I don't think we need an MIB5 regardless if it has Tommy Lee or Will or Rosario Dawson or anybody like Lara Flynn Boyle. Anybody. I don't think that we need an MIB5. I think that the franchise is kind of outdated and doesn't really need a return. That's just how I feel. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but once again, Sony making the right call here, but it's really leading to both Will and Jada making the worst arguments possible out there. It's always about sexism this, or misogyny that, or playing the race card. I mean, this is all, of course, what these celebrities tend to do behind the scenes when it comes to these major Hollywood studios, and it's not really that big of a surprise. So we'll have to see where MIB5 goes on from here as we head into the 2025 year. Again, like I said before, this has been in conversation right now for the past 3+ years, and MIB5 has not moved an inch. Basically, it has not moved forward in production at all. It has been stuck in limbo mode in the early development phase, and that's usually the types of films, by the way, that usually end up getting cancelled, or if anything, they don't end up getting made until like 10-15 years later. That's usually also what happens. But I would like to hear what everyone has to say about the whole Jada Pinkett situation, and also everything going on with Will Smith and what he, of course, is doing against Sony and how he's acting towards Sony. I think it's very much irresponsible on his part. You know, I don't think that you should just force somebody into a film just because you're married to them or just because you are actually very close with them. I think that you should be right for the role. You should actually go into the normal process of getting an acting gig in Hollywood. But overall, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.